Hello, this is Brian Scuttle with Sonic Cinema. A few weeks ago, I had the chance to interview David Darg and Price James. They are the directors behind the documentary You Cannot Kill David Arquette, which is an excellent documentary. And it is playing at Fantasia Fest, but also going into regular release. And I hope you enjoy that interview. So we'll go ahead and get started. What was it about? What inspired you to tell this story as far as David Arquette's journey towards becoming a wrestler?
So, Brian, this is David, the co-director.
Yes.
It's funny, when I first heard the premise for the film, I had no idea that David had been world champion wrestler. And I think a lot of people are going to come into this story and watch this film with that same shock initially. And for Price and I as directors, to have that instant upper hand of intrigue when you hear something that crazy in a story is just a great entry point. And so, yeah, when we first heard, obviously the concept for the film, it was like, yeah, we're on board. It didn't take much convincing. It's just, it's right up our alley. I mean, Price and I both were in bands together as kids, and best friends as kids, and so we have a deep appreciation for counterculture and Americana and kitschiness, and so the opportunity to tell a story that had massive appeal and explore a world that we had some familiarity with and we knew would be crazy was just a dream come true for us. So it was like a perfect fit, really.
Mm-hmm. When it came to access for the film, was there anything that David was not really comfortable with you guys seeing, or was he pretty supportive of basically you guys showing as much as you can?
I mean, basically, he was an open book, and he knew that the success of the film was going to be determined by access and that real, the kind of raw documentary that you don't usually see coming out of Hollywood, especially with like a celebrity, and being extremely honest with his career, his health and mental problems, and we knew we had to lean into that as a sort of supporting, beast. The B story is basically his health, as well as his goal of redemption, which also feeds into mental health, because no one wants to be hated, and to have a chance to kind of change the script and to do it, over a period of time, make a beautiful story that also leans into sort of action sports movie tropes as well, I think was a great kind of combination of feels.
Yeah,
if anything, he was a little bit too comfortable in front of the camera. I mean, there was moments where I was in the shower with him.
And, we saw his penis a few too many times.
Yeah, but the access was amazing. He was very kind to let us into his life to that extent.
Yeah, and one of the things I appreciated so much about it, other than just being a really insightful documentary about him, like you mentioned, feeding into the sports movie tropes, I felt so much of that watching the movie, and I have a particular weakness for sports movies, so that part of the sort of underdog element of it really played with me, and it really comes off as it's weird because of the fact that I couldn't help but feel like I understand that what the wrestlers do is very real, but it's also relatively scripted. So I couldn't help but feeling afterwards that it's like, how much of it's you almost sort of question yourself how much you believe what you're seeing, even though what you're seeing in the punishment they takes is very real. And so the idea that you guys played into those tropes, you played into that genre of filmmaking while also making a very insightful personal documentary is really really impressive as far as this particular subject matter.
Well,
that's exciting to hear you say that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Dude, Brian, that's great that you say that, man. Because I think we kind of bring those elements together as friends and filmmakers. And Darg's like a serious kick-ass documentary maker. He's made, Oscar-nominated short films. And my background is genre, comedy, and, I guess scripted. So even though it was shot observational and first person, the way that, we definitely wanted to handle the footage was to lean into every single trope, every Karate Kid, Rocky. Basically, wanted to make a sort of John Alvidson movie, but as a doc.
Yeah.
And he's one of my heroes. Same with Darg, and we knew that wrestling, like you just mentioned, it's a theatrical entertainment, but it creates real emotion in the viewer. And I think if we could nod or raise questions about that, obviously it's a documentary. It was shot as a documentary. It's everything you see is real. Yeah. But if we could skin and blur that line where in the edit, that was going to make a more kind of cult classic, profound, movie.
Yeah, and I think this
I'm hyped you got into that. That's great.
Yeah, and I think this is really going to play well with audiences, whether you're a fan of wrestling or not. I'm not that much into wrestling, but I found this as an interesting entry point into that world, into both the fandom as well as actually the doing. And I think that's one of the things that's most appealing to me about this movie.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, for us, I wasn't a huge wrestling fan. I loved the kitschiness of it and the idea of it. But it sort of drifted away from wrestling, obviously, later in life. And it wasn't quite as flamboyant as what we grew up with the Hulks and stuff. So to me, it wasn't as interesting in the mainstream. But then once we got into the filmmaking process and started to unpack the independent scene, our eyes were open to this like really incredible world of like amazing characters that are coming together every weekend across America. And this sort of beautiful untold story of this like very dynamic theatrical performances happening in the most random places with this beautiful mix of people that wouldn't ordinarily come together to view these things. And so, yeah, it was fun to explore that world and to learn that world and to see David sort of navigate that world. When we started the project, it was like, okay, well, he was the biggest champ of the biggest network. But really, like, the real wrestling fan is actually an independent wrestling fan because they're the heart and soul of American wrestling, And so to win over that fan was sort of the ultimate goal of the whole project.
What was the most surprising thing that you take away from this experience?
That we're still alive.
Yeah, Brian, we almost, the first, we met David, and then 1.5 hours later, we were basically in a bar fight where our cameras got broken because I kept rolling, and then Darg basically saved my life. And these guys are all 7 foot tall, and I'm a tall guy, but I was like, I felt intimidated. So that combined with the sort of Tijuana street wrestling, we're in the middle of 7 lanes of Mexican traffic. Those kind of moments, you really like. Now looking back on it, we're like, yeah, shit, we were pretty lucky, dude. we scraped through with our lives. But I think for as far as learning curve on a movie, it was just what Darg said. I've fallen back in love with wrestling, especially the bar wrestling scene in LA, because this is where I'm based now. And it's super inclusive. It's like, it's all these things you don't associate with wrestling. You associate with wrestling like Midwest, like drunk bros, but actually it's super inclusive. There's like an LGBT scene in LA. It's all female wrestling as well. And I think in our culture, the way it's heading, you need those reasons to like bring people together. And it really does that. And that was for me the most surprising and the most beautiful.
Yeah, and also just that David accomplished the journey. I mean, when we set out, on paper, it sounded like a wonderful idea that he would do this. But we were looking at a very overweight sort of slob of a David Arquette when he came to us with the concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we were genuinely and very pleasantly surprised that he was able to get shredded as quickly as he did.
Yeah.
And actually put in the time and the work and take the bumps and the beats and commit his body to doing this whole thing. And like, so we, it was more than we hoped for in the end, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got such a beautiful film out of it, but like, when you start something like this, you never really know how it's going to turn out. We could have only hoped that it would turn out as good as it did. But so, I think we were generally beautifully surprised that it all came together in the end.
Yeah, and especially from like the sort of the John Alvarson, angle.
Mm-hmm.
The hero has to be triumphant, in this kind of movie. So for it to actually happen along the way with the pain and the loss of losing one of his best friends,
mm-hmm.
And all the sort of health issues and the near death in the death match. I mean, to have all of that thrown in, I mean, it's a perfect story arc.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much today. I'm really glad I got to talk to you, and good luck with the film as it goes into release.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Brian.
Thank you.